Welcome. In this video, we are going to go through further evidence of Keeler being the God Emperor of mankind. This time, we will focus on the miracles and divine interventions from the current 30K setting, and we'll see how similar they are to Keeler's original powers. Of course, I do recommend watching the previous one that focuses on the Horus Heresy timeline for this theory. And general spoiler warning for 40K lore. To help with the distinction between the Emperor and the being known as the God Emperor. First, we have the Emperor during the Crusade and Heresy era. He is mostly shown as cold and detached from the rest of humanity. While having mankind's best interests at heart, he wastes no effort on individuals, or barely any on the Primarchs. Even custodians are simply tools. He openly despises religion and punishes all those who practice it. He even punished and ridiculed the Primarch, Lorgar Aurelian, for believing that the Emperor is a god and spreading this belief. While the God Emperor appears as a savior, a protector of all, a shining beacon for all of humanity, performing regular miracles on a myriad of battlefields to aid the faithful. A god empathic to the pleas of his followers, which resonates with Keeler's actions during the heresy. Now let's think about the 40K God Emperor and the actions attributed to him. Space Marine 2. The most recent example might even come from the Space Marine 2 game. At the very end, where Tyros is seemingly dying, he hears a voice urging him to rise. This is all too similar to how Keeler mentally supported Garrow at the Battle of Luna, where he faced a Nurgle demon during the early stages of the Horus Heresy. He also heard a voice that made him rise and keep fighting. It was her voice. And here is the exact quote from the book Flight of the Eisenstein. Fate. The word exploded inside him. Who? He gasped. Keeler? Have faith, Nathaniel. You are of purpose. I am. Garrow choked, blood in his mouth stifling his voice. I am. His fingers touched loose rock and closed around a fist-sized stone. I am. Living Saints. Now, demons are usually shards of their god, given form and semi-autonomy, but still being a reflection of the greater whole. As such, it's not that hard to imagine saints like Celestine or Sabbat being shards of Keeler, especially since they shared many abilities and powers. Avatars, born out of faith in Keeler, and stories of her actions during the heresy and the siege. Her name might have been forgotten, but the image of an angelic savior burning away chaos was most likely passed along with the spreading faith in the God Emperor. Echoes left in the wake of her essence becoming the God Emperor. Plague Wars. Saint of Tyros. During the invasion of Ultramar by the Death Guard, the conflict drew Guilliman and Mortarion to a planet named Parminio. The world was under siege for quite some time, and the defenders were hard-pressed to hold. And it is here that a saint emerges to save the day. Starting off as mere whispers of miracles by a young woman who aids the defenders and cleanses corruption, we end up with a full-scale divine intervention. The girl's name is Kelia, and she is as close to Keeler's original powers as one might get. A contingent of Sisters of Battle finds the girl and is convinced she is a living saint sent here by the God Emperor to aid them. She is being tested by the sisters both mentally and for her powers, and both tests are basically torture. Once certain of her abilities, they bring her to the battlefield, and there, to the shock of the Imperial Guard commander, she stands in front of a tank, shooting corrupted bile at the defenders that would melt them in seconds. But when it's about to hit her, the volley turns into pure water. Everything around is cleansed, and the demons can do nothing to her. She turns into a glowing orb of power, and in a godlike voice speaks to the commander. "Keep faith, Devorus. Through faith you shall be saved. Belief is the path to victory. Believe and live." She then tells him that the Primarch is coming to save them, and collapses from the power. At the same time, Brother Matthew, a militant apostolic in the Primarch's fleet, receives a vision from the God Emperor in his dreams. A vision that he must go to Parminio to find the girl, as she is the key to victory. So here we see it's not a localized event, and the power stretches quite far. Upon arrival, Gilliman and others in the fleet command are extremely skeptical and believe her to be a psyker sent by the enemy to trick them. She is then imprisoned under the guard of Space Marines and an Oblivion Knight. This is important, as the Knights are extremely strong at blocking all psyker powers, and being around one is pure agony for anyone with the gift. She is also kept in an anti-psyker chain that should block her powers. Yet during a discussion with the Imperial Guard commander, she informs him that the power is not hers, and she is just a tool to be used against the Death Guard, that the God Emperor wants her to fight. She can easily read the mind of the commander and Space Marine in the room. Just like Keeler, she knows a person and can influence them, and even explains this to people around her. She also seems to see events before they happen, as she knows the Sisters of Battle will attack the prison to free her, and knows exactly when they are coming. Then we have the fight between the Sisters of Battle and the Oblivion Knight guarding the Saint. Before they kill each other, Kelly arises from her chains, glowing with radiant power, and not only the chains binding her powers fall apart, but she also throws the Oblivion Knight against the wall with some kind of psychic force. So we clearly see that just like Keeler, she was immune to blanks and their powers. And finally, she reaches the battlefield, where things are going horribly wrong. Custodies battle hordes of demons, and Guilliman is paralyzed at the mercy of Mortarion, who is about to decapitate him. As we see from the perspective of a custodian, the girl floats through the battlefield, and everywhere time is frozen in place, exactly like Keeler did while stopping Garrow from killing other loyalists who tried to imprison her. Mortarion is stopped mid-swing. Demons and custodians alike are frozen. Only the leader of the custodians is allowed any free movement, just like Garrow was when he protected Keeler, and he is shocked at what he sees. Moments later, the girl explodes with radiant energy, destroying demons and dispelling all Nargol corruption from the area. Guilliman is saved, and Mortarion escapes. She is spent, a vessel who carried the power of a god and burned out. She dies soon after, but for a brief time, she demonstrates exactly the same powers as Keeler. During the Plague Wars, there is a battle where a dying Guilliman is possessed by the Emperor. His eyes glow with yellow light and he radiates power. Now, what he says to Mortarion is quite interesting. "You are a traitor," Guilliman said, in a voice that was not quite his own. "You have brought low all that could have been. But you are as much as a victim as a monster, Mortarion. Perhaps one day you might be saved. Until then, you must go back to the master you chose." As seen many times, the Emperor cares little for his Primarchs. And yet here we see a spark of compassion and understanding, maybe even a hint of forgiveness. Now, this sounds way more like Keeler. From the same book, we have a priest by the name of Matthew, who faces a greater demon of Nurgle in the midst of a plague-infested world, and not only survives, but destroys his plague artifact with bare hands and fate. Now, what is even more interesting to our theory is that after all that, he is still alive, held in a special medical bay where they treat warp-infected patients. There, Robuta is informed that by all accounts, the priest should be dead. But some outside force is keeping him alive. The medbay is also warded from the warp, and no psychic power should be able to penetrate it. Which, as proven by Keeler over and over, was not a problem for what she was and wielded. Saint Sabbat. During the crusade in the Sabbat worlds, we once again witness a saint reborn. And once again she acts exactly as Euphrati Keeler once did. From the very beginning, we see a young girl exerting an unnatural calm over a raging crowd. She moves through the chaos effortlessly, tending to a wounded man, and stopping his execution by a mob through sheer presence alone. Later, she stands openly in front of enemy fire, and no one can hit her. Just like Keeler on the battlements during the Siege of Terra. But here's where it gets interesting. The girl is only beginning to manifest her powers, and she dies. She sacrifices herself to save children, and her death sends a devastating shockwave through the faithful defenders. And crucially, only those who believe feel it. Moments later, we see another girl, one who had previously claimed to be Saint Sabbat, suddenly become her. She inherits the full measure of the Saint's power and goes on to lead the war on the planet's surface. This strongly suggests that the power itself is not innate to the individual. It is something passed on, an extension, not an origin. And once again, we see the same familiar signs. The Saint stops time in the middle of battle, frozen for everyone except a single witness. Just like Keeler did for Garl, and Saint of Tyros did for the Custodes leader. She also sees branching futures, identifies imminent threats, and guides Imperial forces through impossible odds. All the while, radiating calm, clarity, and strength to those fighting around her. The examples continue, but this is more than enough to establish a clear pattern. Every living saint displays the same abilities Euphrati Keeler possessed before the God Emperor ever existed. And that coincidence is becoming very difficult to ignore. Saint Celestine. As the most recognizable saint, I won't go through her powers, as most of them mirror what we already discussed. But one thing about her does stand out. Celestine believes herself to have lived through the final stages of the Siege of Terra, the assault on the Imperial Palace itself. While it's hard to say if that is true, it is an interesting coincidence that she first sees the God Emperor in the exact same moment when Keeler is awakening the Astronomicon by channeling the power of millions of faithful inside the Hollow Mountain. It's the moment where I believe she creates the God Emperor as an entity and ascends to become it. The examples of miracles and powers could go on, as the lore is rich with them. But I think this is enough to make my point. The God Emperor is nothing in character like the 40k Emperor stuck on the Golden Throne. Keeler had the power before there was a God Emperor. God Emperor's miracles and his saints mirror that power. There was no God until Keeler made one.